In order for us to affirm or posit anything at all, we must first have a standpoint. There must be a subject that knows and an object that is known. The act of conceptualization always divides experience into these two aspects. It therefore follows that in order to declare something as absolute, we must render it into an object of thought. It must be something conceived and something to be known. But of course, that which is conditioned by thought cannot itself be unconditioned, and no conceptual assertion can be the actual ultimate asserted. The absolute is not a thing among things, and it's not a metaphysical substratum behind things. Everything depends on everything else, and nothing is isolated from anything else. Reality is fluid process, not fixed substance. There is no limit as to what can arise, and there is no absolute thing for us to realize. Freedom is the recognition that the ultimate state of things is the ever-open field of possibility that is revealed when our grasping at static limits and things ceases. Freedom is also the end of bondage to conceptual distinctions, but this opposition is itself a conceptual distinction. Bondage and freedom are opposites, for the latter is the end of the former, but this opposition is purely conceptual. Bondage arises when we cling to appearances and solidify what is fluid. Freedom arises when we see through this illusion. The same reality misperceived is bondage, accurately perceived, it is freedom. When we posit existence versus non-existence, or bondage versus freedom, we are operating within the framework of conceptualization. We can distinguish the ultimate reality from conventional experience from the perspective of conventional experience, but we cannot do so from the perspective of ultimate reality. Ultimately, ultimate reality cannot be called existence nor non-existence. It cannot be called one nor many. It transcends the categories of thought through which such claims could be made. From the perspective of ultimate reality, there is only the absence of all points of reference. All we can say is that the ultimate reality is the explanation of our conventional experience. Conventionally, we can say that the ultimate truth is the absence of duality, but ultimately even this dissolves. The absence of duality is absent of duality, but our cognition of it is not. Ultimately, there is no object we can posit independent of our own subjective representations. There are no things in the sense of fixed, self-subsistent entities. And this does not mean that there is something invisible and intangible existing beyond our sensibility. If we claim this, then we are just shifting the notion of an ultimate thing from the visible to the invisible, from the thinkable to the unthinkable. And this leaves the conceptual structure of subject, object, and ground intact. The ultimate is not a hidden reality behind what appears, it is simply the mode of appearance when freed from conceptual fixation. When we cease to overlay our projections of solid being, phenomena reveal themselves as they truly are, transient, ungraspable, luminous. Accordingly, this immediate transience and ungraspability and luminosity is the ultimate reality, not a veil covering it. The veil is simply the idea that what is transient is permanent, that what is ungraspable is graspable, and that what is luminous is material. On one hand, there is ultimately nothing. On the other, this nothing is aware and cognizant and responsive and creative. It is the knowing and appearing and shining of nothing. It is just this happening, with nothing producing it and nothing receiving it. Delusion and wisdom are ultimately neither the same nor different nor both nor neither, because to compare or contrast them, we must isolate them as stable entities, when no such entities exist. When this is not seen, delusion. When it is seen, wisdom. And there is a path from delusion to wisdom and from bondage to freedom, but only up until there isn't one, only until both are recognized as one open field of happening. If this happening was not self-knowing, then the ultimate would be an abstract nothingness. If it was not non-dual, then the ultimate would be a concrete something. Neither are true, because the very absence of substantiality is the intelligible creativity of reality. Everything that appears to awareness. Whatever we call the world is revealed as experience. There is no phenomenon that stands apart from consciousness. Even the solidity of matter is just a pattern within perception, known only through the mediating field of awareness itself. The physical is certainly pragmatically real, but its only mode of givenness is experiential. As such, the openness which allows for appearances is also a cognitive openness, whereby appearing and knowing are inseparable aspects of one process. Awareness is not a separate consciousness standing apart from the world. It is not an independent knower observing objects. Awareness is not a thing that exists at all. It is just the self-revealing aspect of the fact that appearances are known. Nevertheless, the spontaneous, self-ordering clarity of reality can be thought of as a kind of fundamental intelligence. Again, the intelligibility of experience is not caused from the outside, rather emptiness itself is intelligent. The freedom from any fixed nature is precisely what allows for the articulation of this orderly appearance. If we were to take this luminous knowing at the heart of experience and reify it as a kind of cosmic mind that oversees the world, then we would believe in an absolute unchanging being. And if we were to deny it altogether, imagining that there is nothing but inert matter mindlessly grinding through mechanical causation, then we would believe that all meaning and consciousness are epiphenomena of dead substance. Both options are extremes that rely on the same underlying misconception, that reality must be grounded in some dualistic notion that the mind can finally land on. Apophatic, or negative theology, is the idea that we can speak only in terms of what may not be said about the divine, that the absolute cannot be captured by concepts or language. This is in contrast to cataphatic theology, which uses positive language to refer to the divine. It is well understood, by all who understand, that to speak of the divine cataphatically is by its nature a limitation of the divine. In defining what God is, the limited nature of human understanding imposes itself on the absolute and unlimited. The mystic does not reach God by accumulating discursive knowledge, but by an ever-deepening unknowing in which all the categories of thought collapse. Plotinus and the Neoplatonists taught that the One is beyond being and beyond thought. From it flows all multiplicity, yet the One itself remains untouched, ineffable and simple. The soul's ascent to the One proceeds through negation, stripping away every image, concept, and intellectual effort until only silence remains. The early church fathers of Christianity similarly taught that the essence of God is unknowable. Tertullian said that our incapacity of grasping God affords us the idea of what he really is. Cyril of Jerusalem said that in what concerns God, to confess our ignorance is the best knowledge. St. Augustine defined God as other, completely other, and said that if you can understand something, it is not God. Pseudo-Dionysius the Areopagite bridged Neoplatonism with Christian theology, describing God as the divine darkness, beyond all affirmation and beyond every negation. Every name is to be denied, even being, goodness, and life, because these two belong to the realm of concepts. Neither is there sense, nor image, nor opinion, nor reason, nor knowledge of him, he said. We may ascend toward God only through unknowing, which is the realization that we cannot know him. John Scotus Erigena said that it is wholly impossible to know what God is because God is not anything. Literally, God is not, because he transcends being. Thomas Aquinas said, because we cannot know what God is, but rather what he is not, we have no means for considering how God is, but rather how he is not. Meister Eckhart spoke of the Godhead beyond God, the silent ground where all distinctions vanish. God is nothing, he said, meaning God is not a thing among things. And there are many other works, like the anonymous work of Christian mysticism called The Cloud of Unknowing, and St. John of the Cross's Dark Night of the Soul, which all emphasize that divine union occurs through darkness, unknowing, and the stripping away of images. Indeed, since 1215, apophaticism has been the official position of the Catholic Church, and the Orthodox Church similarly teaches that apophatic theology is the only true way to God, since cataphaticism concerns an existing object, whereas God is beyond all existing. In Buddhism, avidya, ignorance, refers to the tendency of the mind to solidify what is in fact fluid. It is awareness turning opaque to itself, appearing as an objective world separate from a subject. Instead of ignorance, Christianity speaks of original sin, though it carries many of the same implications. The fall of man is humanity's turn away from God, the eating of the fruit of knowledge of morality, and the birth of duality, subject opposed to object, good opposed to evil. Like the Buddhist state of nirvana, paradise or Eden symbolizes an original immediacy, the state before the conceptual split. In traditional Christianity, the fall is moralized. It is a willful rebellion that requires redemption. In Buddhism, ignorance is not a sin, but an inevitable phase of the unfolding of awareness. Nevertheless, both salvation and enlightenment reflect a reunion, a return to the ground, whether through divine grace or through insight. In Genesis, the fall of man is described thusly. The woman said unto the serpent, We may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God hath said, Ye shall not eat of it, neither shall ye touch it, lest ye die. And the serpent said unto the woman, Ye shall not surely die, for God doth know that in the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. And when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree to be desired to make one wise, she took of the fruit thereof, and did eat, and gave also unto her husband with her, and he did eat. And the eyes of them both were opened, and they knew that they were naked. The subsequent expulsion from Eden is the loss of unmediated presence, the emergence of subject-object cognition. Sin is the reification of that divided state, clinging to the image of a separate self rather than resting in the mystery of life. Repentance, or metanoia in Greek, literally means a change of mind, or turning of awareness. This signifies the turning back from conceptual fixation to immediacy, from thought about God to direct participation in the divine ground. Grace is not an external gift descending from another realm, but the self-disclosure of that ground within the creature, the spontaneous breakthrough of what has never in fact been absent. And faith is not the assent to a list of propositions, it is the practice of trust in the incomprehensible ground. It is the readiness to simply rely on the mystery rather than to master it conceptually. It is, as the early church fathers imply, the surrendering of dualistic or conceptual knowledge, which is non-dual or immediate knowledge. When the divine is understood apophatically, morality cannot be obedience to an external command. It must be participation in the very flow of the absolute. If the ground of being is relational and self-giving, then love of neighbour, mercy, compassion, and justice arise not as decrees, but as the spontaneity of that ground manifesting through persons. Of course, in the Abrahamic faiths, the point of contact with the Absolute is not described as an impersonal ground, but as a voice, a thou. Revelation is experienced as an encounter, and the holy books frequently describe a God who speaks and acts, and thus we cannot deny that the dominant mode of description in the Abrahamic traditions is cataphatic. But it is imperative that we understand this as a pragmatic means of communication and practice, rather than as literal metaphysical theses. The Catholic Church acknowledges this. When we describe God as merciful and just and redeeming, we know that we cannot be speaking literally. These predicates cannot be meant to contain God, because a God that cannot be captured by such human concepts is greater than one who can be. We should trust the Church when it says that its God is the greatest, and the greatest God is beyond our misunderstandings of what it means to exist. The doctrine of analogia entis, which is a guiding principle of Catholic thought, claims that we only relate the being of created things with the being of God through analogy, that the mode of being of God is entirely different to the modes of being of all things in the cosmos. When we say God is loving, we do not mean the same thing as when we call a mother loving. The concept loving is just an analogy to something beyond description. And the purpose of these analogies is to sustain a dialogue between human beings and the mystery. God transcends all these affirmations, yet a relationship with God requires positive language, because you cannot have a relationship with something that isn't revealed at all. The world is real, good, and meaningful, and to affirm this is to recognize that God indeed expresses himself as this world. The world itself is a kind of speech. It is the manifestation of the logos through which the invisible becomes visible. Thus, the Gospel of John begins with, "In the beginning was the Logos, and the Logos was with God, and the Logos was God. It was with God in the beginning. All things were made by it, and without it was not anything made that was made. In it was life, and the life was the light of men. And the light shineth in darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not." That is to say, awareness shines through the apparent veiling of itself. In the Genesis creation narrative, the Spirit of God moves upon the face of the waters and reforms the earlier state of the universe, which is likened to a watery chaos upon which there is darkness and confusion. This reflects the cosmogony of earlier mythological traditions. In Sumerian, Babylonian, Egyptian, and Greek myth, the universe is formed from the primordial ocean of chaos, which was syncretized by Philo with the Hebrew title for the Most High, Elion. Disagreeing with the subtle implication of a primordial substance, unformed as it may be, the Church Fathers posited instead a creation ex nihilo, creation from nothing. But the implication of both interpretations is that creation arises from a no-thingness, the same radical openness that Buddhism calls sunyata. Creation is the spontaneous arising of form within that openness, which is infinite potential. And so, when the word becomes flesh, the universe is speaking in the form of human intelligibility. Christ is a symbol of the fundamental truth that freedom and form are eternally inseparable, that the unlimited is perpetually incarnated as the limited in every single instant. Western religion speaks to the heart before the brain. People pray and repent and have faith, and they need symbols and language to direct all those things. Merely staying silent on the topic of the absolute, even if that is the only way to be truthful, gives far too little structure for communal devotion, and we've never had the same level of a meditative tradition as exists in the East. And so, in order to render the intangible tangible and to sustain a relationship to it, we personalize the absolute. It becomes a thou, rather than an it. And due to the way we represent the divine in our minds, Western traditions express immediacy and the self-revealing mystery in which knowing and being are one as a personal encounter, while Eastern traditions express the same as impersonal openness. Nevertheless, the East too uses cataphatic or positive language to express their ultimate principle. They just haven't forgotten for why they do it. In Vedanta, at the ultimate level of analysis, the ultimate reality, Brahman, is describable only via negation, neti neti, but at a more conventional level, it is described as Sat Chit Ananda, being consciousness bliss. The Upanishads speak of it as smaller than the smallest, greater than the greatest, the self of all beings. It is both immanent and transcendent, the intimate interior of all experience, and the vastness in which all arises. And as we saw in the previous videos, in the Tathagatagarbha, or Buddha nature tradition of Buddhism, every being is said to contain the indwelling self-luminous awareness that is eternal, blissful, and pure. While Buddha nature is ultimately empty of inherent existence and not a truly established entity, it is described in positive terms in order to avoid the nihilistic conclusion that consciousness is ultimately non-existent. Awareness is present everywhere as everything. All knowing occurs within it, and nothing stands outside it to oppose it. In this sense, it is omnipresent, omniscient, and omnipotent. Every perception and thought is a divine act of imagination. It is the dance of Shiva. It is the radiance of Vairocana, Samantrabhadra, or Vajradhara, the cosmic Buddha whose body is the entire universe. The creator is creativity itself, which is also the capacity to know. Both Buddhism and Christianity even rest on a trinity that encodes the dynamic nature of this ineffable ground. The Father represents the silent source, the transcendent unconditioned void akin to the Dharmakaya, the ultimate reality of enlightened awareness. The Son represents the link between the Absolute and the world of human beings, akin to the Nameless, the manifestation of enlightened awareness. And the Spirit represents the compassionate, blissful activity through which the ground is expressed, endowed with the virtues of spirituality, akin to the Sambhogakaya, the joyful energy of enlightened awareness. Reverence and devotion and love of God are not supposed to be subjective imputations onto an object. They are states of being that awaken naturally as we resonate with our own ground. Religion is simply a tool for us to participate consciously within this divine movement of self-disclosure, this arising of a self-conscious world out of nothingness. The existence of this experience is the irreducible mystery which is presupposed by every possible explanation of itself. It is a miracle not because it violates some fundamental natural law, but because natural law itself is possible, that life is possible. Creativity is not an agent that decides to create, it is simply the expressive essence of emptiness. Being free from fixed essence, it is unlimited in its capacity to express itself. Ultimately, nothing can be traced back to an ultimate cause, and having no ultimate cause, everything is ultimately miraculous. Miraculousness is the ultimate cause. God is the unbounded awareness that is all things, knows all things, and loves all things as itself. It is the silence behind every sound, the seeing of all seers, the joy that creates and redeems itself in each instant, the endless delight of presence discovering its own being again and again and again and again. God is not something for you to believe. It is a condition for you to become.